Alright, hi everyone, how's it going? And welcome to another video. Now, recently I saw one of those lists on the internet that talked about the greatest movies that have never been made. Now, when you make a movie, first a movie goes through the pre-development phase, then the development phase, and then post-development. And there have been some movies that people have said may have been really good. These movies were never able to make it out of the pre-development phase, even though a lot of money had gone into making these movies. And one such movie that you often hear about when you see these lists is Stanley Kubrick's big-budget epic Napoleon film that never got made. Now, supposedly Stanley Kubrick had read hundreds of books about Napoleon Bonaparte, and he wanted to make this really big-budget epic. And he even incorporated some of his research and knowledge of early modern times and Napoleon in a 2001 A Space Odyssey. You know, that whole scene where the astronaut goes into that room that kind of looks like Napoleon's bedroom? That supposedly was because Stanley Kubrick had really been reading up on Napoleon a lot and that whole time period. And he wanted to incorporate what he had learned in a 2001 A Space Odyssey. But what he eventually wanted to do was this real big-budget Napoleon film. However, a film came out by the name of Waterloo, which was also a Napoleon film, and that film was a flop. And as a result of that film being a flop, the studio didn't want to touch Stanley Kubrick's big-budget Napoleon film, and Stanley Kubrick ultimately ended up making the film Barry Lyndon instead. So, Stanley Kubrick's big-budget Napoleon film was not the only ambitious film project that never ended up getting off the ground. In fact, I just saw a documentary last night on Jodorowsky's Dune film. Now, Jodorowsky was a filmmaker. He made real, surrealistic films. Incorporated a lot of surrealism, a lot of psychedelia. His films were really kind of out there. And he had found out about Dune, and he got really excited about it and really felt that he could do this really, big budget, epic Dune film. And he said he wanted to make it like taking acid without taking acid. That you would have this psychedelic experience almost just by watching the film. And he assembled a team of people to do this. It was very ambitious. He was going to have Pink Floyd and Tangerine Dream do the soundtrack. He was also going to have Mick Jagger be in the movie, as well as Salvador Dali, and Orson Welles was going to be in it as well. David Carradine, too, was another person that was going to be in this movie. So, really just, on paper, it seemed like, it would be something interesting. However, in order to do Dune, he said the movie had to be about 12 hours long. Now, here's the thing about Jodorowsky that I kind of don't really understand. Supposedly, he had never even read Dune, but yet he is really passionate about it to want to get this Dune project off the ground. But he had never read it, and I just don't get that. How could you be really passionate about something, based on a book when you've never read the source material? I just don't get that. But he had supposedly not read it, but someone told him about it, and I guess he got excited about it and really wanted to make this film. And like I said, he definitely, he had a good team that he wanted to assemble to make this film. He even referred to the people that he wanted to assemble to make the film as his spiritual warriors, because he definitely saw this as kind of a spiritual and religious undertaking in a lot of ways. Now, if you've ever read Dune, I mean, Dune, came out in 1965. It was written by Frank Herbert. Frank Herbert had supposedly done 6 years of research before he ever even began writing the book. He researched religions, he researched political systems, he researched ecology, just all sorts of different things. And then he sat down to write the book and wrote this epic. Now, Dune tends to not be for everybody. There's people who, it tends to be that kind of thing where, either you really love it or you hate it. It's that kind of thing. It's not like Star Wars, where Star Wars appeals to a very wide audience. Dune tends not to. There's people that, like I said, really love it. There's people that don't like it. They see it as being kind of boring. One thing about Dune, and one thing that's kind of famous for, is it's famous for having a lot of unusual words and language in it, and you almost need to consult a glossary. And I think there may be one in the book, but you almost need to consult a glossary as you read through the book, because there's a lot of unusual terms in the book. But yeah, it tends to be the kind of thing, like I said, you either love it or you hate it. And there's a number of different books that have come out. Ultimately, a Dune film did get made in 1985. That was David Lynch's Dune. Now, David Lynch's Dune was a box office flop, and it was slammed heavily by the critics. I've seen it, and I thought it was okay. But the thing is Dune is the kind of thing that you can't fit into a 2.5-hour movie. Dune really needs a Game of Thrones style HBO series. A big budget HBO style series in order to really make it work. And there's a lot of risk involved in that, because who knows if it will work or not. There was a Dune miniseries in 2000, and although people claim that did include more of the Dune universe and more things regarding Dune, because it was longer than the David Lynch film, people generally didn't like the look of the film, or the look of the Dune series. They generally didn't like it. And like I said, it was a mini-series, and people generally just didn't like the way it looked. Some people said it kind of looked like a Hercules or Xena episode. Now, I was a big fan of that show, but that has been the complaint of some people in regards to that 2000 Sci-Fi Channel Dune series. But the David Lynch Dune, what I did like about it, now like I said, you really can't fit that sort of thing like Dune into a 2.5-hour movie, but I really liked the costumes and the sets. The sets were really good in the David Lynch Dune film. It seems to me that today in Hollywood, they don't really spend a lot of time and effort and energy in really building good sets. And the sets in this 1985 Dune were great. They really were. Costumes were cool too, and I really like how they did the sandworms. The sandworms are not CGI. They look like real objects, and some of them are just absolutely huge. And there's some really good scenes in the David Lynch film with the sandworms. So ultimately, I thought the David Lynch film, although it was slammed by a lot of critics, I thought it was okay. I would say it was just okay. But, yeah, Jodorowsky, like I said, getting back to that, really wanted to make this big budget Dune film. It was going to be very long. It was going to be very, like I said, psychedelic and surreal. And I guess the studios probably felt that maybe a lot of Americans wouldn't really like that kind of thing. Because, surrealism and all that tends to go over a bit better in Europe than it does America. There's people in America that like that stuff a lot too, don't get me wrong, but generally speaking, I think, surrealism tends to be a bit bigger and more popular in Europe than it is in America. Just in general. But, yeah, Jodorowsky, assembled a group of artists. He had different artists working on this. One of the artists that he had working on Dune was H.R. Giger. And some people are probably aware of him, some might not be. H.R. Giger is most famous for designing the creature from Alien. And he also designed, from what I understand, I think the sets in Alien too, or at least some of them. But this is one of the things that H.R. Giger had designed for Dune. This right here. As you can see, this kind of does look like something from Alien in a way. In fact, I think there might have been something similar to this in Prometheus, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah, this is H.R. Giger right here. He was going to work on this film, and this was one of his designs. There's some other really cool artwork associated with this film as well. This is the most famous one right here. This ship, as you can see. And there's a really cool building design right here for the film. I mean, that's pretty cool. And here's another one of a ship. Looks like it was hit by something, and there's spice leaking out of it. But, yeah, another thing about the Jodorowsky Dune film is he didn't want to really follow the Frank Herbert Dune book to a T. He kind of wanted to sort of do his own thing. And, yeah, I don't know about that. And I don't even know how well that would have been received, especially by the purists, right? I don't know how well such a thing would have been received, because from what I understand, he did want to have either the Baron or the Emperor have like a robot assistant. And if you know Dune, if you know anything about Dune, there's no robots in Dune. In the Dune universe, there was what was called the Valerian Jihad, where they waged a war against technology and robots, and they did away with all of that. And that's 10,000 years before Dune starts, because Dune takes place 20,000 years into the future. So, yeah, having a robot in Dune kind of goes against, like I said, like what Dune is. Because as a result of not having robots, people are forced to develop their minds almost like computers, which a lot of them do with the aid of this spice, which is only found on the Dune planet. So, yeah, might have been a great film, might not have been. Really difficult to say. Like I said, it is often called the greatest film never to have been made. And I've noticed lately that there have been a large number of films coming out that have kind of been about this kind of thing, like various artists or filmmakers, musicians and bands that were almost famous, but not quite. For example, I know there have been some documentaries on bands where a band was in a boardroom meeting with like record executives, and then one of the band members might have said something kind of goofy at the wrong time, and the whole deal was sabotaged and fell apart, and the band never ended up getting their record deal that they were hoping for, and ultimately never ended up making it big. You have a number of these kind of almost famous type documentaries out there. That's just something I've noticed recently. You know, this Jodorowsky's Dune certainly reminded me of one of those types of documentaries. It is a great documentary. If you have not seen the Jodorowsky Dune documentary, I do recommend checking it out because I do think it's very interesting. You know, because Jodorowsky wanted to make this film, but he just couldn't make it. He didn't have like a body of work like George Lucas did. George Lucas had done American Graffiti before Star Wars, and although the studio did not understand Star Wars, they thought that was weird too. They did recognize the fact that American Graffiti was a hit, and they agreed to make Star Wars. But with Jodorowsky's Dune, it was a different story. You know, he hadn't made something like American Graffiti. So, yeah, you know, like I said, excellent documentary. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. That's all I've got. You know, if you've watched this video, as always, I thank you for watching. Have a great night.